Hi everybody and welcome to Everyday Manna. Today we are going to be making some soup. We're going to make a Texas cabbage soup. Beef cabbage soup is one of my most favorite soups. It's absolutely delicious, but we're going to kind of Texify it up a little bit. We're going to spice it up a little bit more than my normal beef cabbage soup. So we're going to get that started. I've already got a pot on the stove with a couple of pounds of lean ground beef that I'm just going to start browning while we work on the cornbread. To go alongside the soup, we are going to make a jalapeno cornbread, which I love so much. And then we're going to make a Texas caviar dip as an appetizer while we're waiting on our food to cook. That's a great little dish that you can make ahead anytime. It's a great little buffet type dish or a appetizer, football party, whatever kind of gathering you have, or just for yourself. It is one of those dishes that is even better when you make it ahead and give it a chance to kind of marinate in those flavors, to blend and get together. So we're going to get that in just a minute, but we're going to get started on the cornbread while our beef is browning. I have my oven preheated to 400 degrees, and I have an 8 by 8 inch dish that I have sprayed with a non-stick baking spray. It's not the same as your regular non-stick spray. This kind has flour in it, and I love it for baked goods. So that's ready to go. In this bowl, I have a cup of flour, just all-purpose flour. I have 3/4 of a cup of cornmeal. Now, this is not cornbread mix. This is actually just cornmeal. Be careful when you're at the store and you're buying those, because the cornmeal mix already has your leaveners and things in it, where the cornmeal does not. If you only have the cornmeal mix, then you will want to leave out the baking powder, which I'm going to add right now, about a tablespoon. I like sweet cornbread. If you don't like sweet cornbread, you can leave this out. This is just a tablespoon of sugar. If you don't like sweet cornbread, leave that out. And a little bit of salt. And again, if you are using cornbread mix, cut back on the salt a little bit, because that has a little bit in it and you don't want it to be too salty. I like to get those ingredients, my dry ingredients, mixed before I add anything else to it. And that just really incorporates all of the ingredients evenly. Now, to that, I'm going to add some cheddar cheese. I've got about a cup. And in this bowl, I'm going to mix the rest of the ingredients. I've got a couple of eggs, just 2 eggs. I'm going to beat those before I add anything. I like to beat my eggs first. I find it more difficult to get it even if you wait and do it all together. Could just be me, but that's the way I like to do it. Then I'm going to add 8 ounces of sour cream. If you don't have sour cream, you could use an unflavored plain yogurt. I like Greek yogurt for this. If you want to use yogurt, you can. It works great in baked dishes. I'm also going to add a cup of creamed corn. Now, my can of creamed corn was almost 2 cups, and I don't want all that in here. So I just measured out a cup, and the remainder of it I'm just going to put in the soup, because what am I going to do with almost a cup of creamed corn? The recipe doesn't call for it, but if you have leftover corn, it's great in that soup, so you can do it that way. Now, I like to use fresh jalapenos in this recipe, but my store did not have any fresh jalapenos. I don't know why. Nowadays, it's rhyme or reason what you're going to find when you get to the store. But they do sell the little containers, the 4 ounces of jalapenos and diced chilies. So I use both in this recipe, but because I don't have any fresh jalapenos, I'm just going to use the canned kind and leave out the other. It's fine. You can do whatever you need to do. I like to stir those up, the wet ingredients. Get all of that combined. If you have a poblano chili at the store, you can get a poblano chili. And if you have a gas stove, you can just do it straight over the flame, or you can put it in the oven until the outside of the chili becomes black, much like you would roast red peppers or green peppers, and then peel off that blackened part, dice the poblano. Oh, it's really good. That will work too. Let me kind of incorporate my cheese just a little bit, sort of coat that cheese with the flour. And then I'm going to put my wet ingredients into my dry and stir it together. It's that easy. It's not difficult to make a really good cornbread. And I mean, I like cornbread with about anything. And I make a lot of different varieties of cornbread. This one is just a jalapeno. If you don't like spicy, you can follow this exact ingredient. Just leave out the chilies. That's fine too. Works great. The sour cream or yogurt and all of our liquid ingredients are plenty enough. You don't need to add any milk to this recipe. And then what you're going to do is pour that evenly into your pan that you have sprayed. If you don't have the spray, you can use nonstick spray. It will work fine. If you don't have any nonstick spray, take a little bit of butter or some kind of oil and coat your pan. And then if you want to add a little flour and kind of toss it around, that's fine too. But I do find the baking nonstick spray very handy to have in my kitchen. And for me, that is a pantry staple. Okay, we're going to just spread that out evenly. And with any baked good, I like to gently just kind of drop it, and that sort of levels it out and helps it to cook a little more evenly, gets rid of those pockets of air. I'm going to pop this in a 400-degree oven. I'm going to test it in 30 minutes and see if it's ready to go. I like to bake my cornbread in the center of the oven. Let's check on our beef. All right, it's starting. I'm going to clean up this mess, take a quick break, and when I come back, we will get started on our soup. So good. I'll be back in just a minute. All righty, welcome back. Now our cornbread is baking in the oven. Our beef is browning on the stovetop. So let's go ahead and chop up our vegetables. Now for this dish, I like to have a couple of carrots. And I'm going to peel mine. I have a trash can right here, so let's just peel it over the trash can. See how many pieces we can get on the ground instead of in the trash can. Okay, you don't have to peel. And if I by chance have organic carrots, I don't. I just scrub them real good, but these aren't, so I'm gonna just peel them. Oh, so far I'm at 3, 4, 4. Not too bad. It happens to you too, I know it does. And I'm going to just chop these into little cubes. I'm going to cut my carrot in half. I find it a little easier to manage if I cut it into a smaller piece. You cut it into half moons, shred it, whatever you want to do. It'll work either way. But I find the little bite-sized pieces a little easier to manage. Now, I am a person, it doesn't have to be winter for me to want soup. I eat soup year-round. I'm a big soup lover. Now, these smaller ends, I'm just going to cut in half because they're about the same size. You just want all your pieces to be about the same size. It can be 90 degrees outside, and I'll make chili. I love chili with potatoes, like over a baked potato, or over, I really like it over spaghetti, or with macaroni added into it. Either way, it will work. Then I'm going to have, this one was a decent size onion, so I'm only going to do half of it. But if you want more onion, you add as much. One small onion or half of a medium will be fine. I'm going to use the other half in the Texas Caviar. If I didn't have another recipe to use the other half immediately, I would probably use the whole thing, or cut it, do what I'm doing here, and go ahead and chop the other half and pop it in your freezer, put it in a little Ziploc bag, and it works great. I do that sometimes too. Just depends on the recipe. Sometimes, and lately I've been doing this, I find it easier to chop the onion if you leave the root end intact. Let's check our beef. We'll go over here for just a second. Yeah, it's browning up real good. Okay, you want a big soup pot for this. That's almost all the way browned, not quite. It's going to simmer, so it's fine to add. I'm going to go ahead and add my carrots and my onion now. If I was at home, I would have this cutting board right beside my stove so you can just chop it and put it in there immediately. That's a good little tip for you at home. Okay, we're going to stir that in. Now you can add any ingredients that you like, whatever vegetables. You could put some green pepper in that. You could put some celery would be good, whatever you like. I've got my other part of that can of creamed corn. I don't normally have that, so that's just to avoid wasting the corn. Now I'm just using pantry ingredients here. I've got a can of stewed tomatoes. Now my recipe calls for 2 cans of stewed tomatoes, but I had a can of diced tomatoes, which are what this is. So I'm going to use that and stewed tomatoes. You use whatever you have in your pantry. It'll all work. Any kind of tomato product, just 2 cans. Okay, we're going to add these. All right. I broke my cardinal rule. I want to add 1 pack of taco seasoning mix. Normally, I would have added this before I added the tomatoes, but I forgot. But that's okay, we'll do it now. Oh, if you could smell that, it smells so good. Now, your stewed tomatoes will have bigger chunks in it, so just use your spoon to break them up if you want. Or you can chop them a little bit before you put them in. I'm going to add just a touch of salt and a touch of pepper, not much. The rest of my creamed corn. We don't want to waste food, and it really goes well in this kind of soup. And I'm going to add 8 cups of water. You could do beef broth if you wanted to. I'm just going to use water. Now, what I want to do is kind of let that come up. That's not the right lid for that, but that's okay. Oh, wait a minute. We got to add one more ingredient. 1 can, I like dark red kidney beans, but you could use whatever, light red, dark red. If you don't like kidney beans, you could use black beans or pinto beans, white beans, great northern beans, whatever kind of bean you like. I'm not going to drain these. I'm just going to put them in liquid and all. And kind of stir that all together. And I'm going to let this simmer for a few minutes before I add my cabbage, because I am a person who likes my cabbage to be not so soggy, and I like a little texture left in my cabbage. This is a pretty big head of cabbage. I don't need all of this. So I've washed it. I'm going to cut it in half. We'll see how much I add. Sometimes I add it all, because I have to give you a little secret. Cabbage is my favorite vegetable. I love it so much. And whenever I make beef cabbage soup or cabbage rolls or anything with cabbage, when it's been in the pot for like 5 minutes, I always get a bowl out and eat it when it's just barely starting to soften, and then add more. So it depends on how much I eat out of that pot as to whether I add it all or not. We'll see. You add as much or as little as you like. What I like to do is cut my cabbage in half, cut the half in quarters, and then cut out the core. Makes it a little easier. And then depends on how fine you like your cabbage. I don't want it too fine, but I also don't want it huge pieces, because this is soup. You want it about soup, spoon size, bite size. Cabbage is so good for you. And if you think you don't like cabbage, you probably have had it cooked to death. And it's just so much better when it's not cooked to death. It really is. It's delicious. And it's inexpensive, and it's so nutritious and full of fiber and vitamins, minerals. It's very good for you. Cabbage belongs to a group of recipes called a cruciferous vegetable. So it really is healthy for your gut, and it's a wonder vegetable to me. My favorite. But anyway, I'm going to check the soup, check the cornbread, kind of clean up. When I come back, we'll get started on the Texas caviar. I'll be back in just a minute. All righty, welcome back. Now our soup is simmering. Let's check it. Actually, I think I'm going to turn it down just a little bit. Look at that, how good that looks. Let's just let that go for a minute, and then I'll add my cabbage like the last 10 minutes for me. If you like your cabbage a little softer, go ahead and add it in there. Now for this dip, we have 2 cans of black-eyed peas that I did drain. I didn't rinse them, but I did drain them. Now, this particular can of black-eyed peas has some bacon in it. I don't want that, so I'm actually going to pick that bacon out. Now, if I was just eating them, heating them up and eating them, I would leave that in there, but we're not doing that. These are going to be raw, so, or not raw, but, cold. To this, we're going to add, if I can find my little thing here. Again, my store didn't have any jalapenos, so I would add 1, maybe 2 jalapenos, but they do have the diced jalapenos. So I'm going to add just a can, not draining that, just a can of diced jalapenos. Or if you don't have the diced jalapenos, you could use the diced green chilies. Either one will work. And then 1 can of petite diced tomatoes. I am going to drain them a little bit, not too much. I like to use my little drainer here and reserve that liquid. If I think it needs it, I'll add it back in, but probably won't. But we'll keep that to the side. Now, let's make our dressing real quick. In this cup, I have about 8 tablespoons of red wine vinegar and 8 tablespoons of olive oil. I'm going to add some salt and some pepper, some dried oregano, some cumin and garlic powder, and I'm going to whisk that together. And that's going to be our dressing. My soup is going crazy over there, so let me turn it down a little more. I got to find the right lid for that pot. Okay, now we're going to add some parsley. I like flat leaf parsley. If you're a fan of cilantro, feel free to add cilantro. I'm not a fan. I'm in that camp of it tasting soapy, so I don't eat it unless it's in a salsa or something like that. But if you like it, substitute cilantro. I'm just doing flat leaf parsley because I want a little bit of brightness. I want a little bit of green in there. Put your knife down on one end of your board and then just work your way over whatever you're mincing. I don't want it too fine. Okay. All right. Add that in. Now, I'm going to use my little chopper for my onion because I don't want big pieces of onion in this. If you're not a fan of raw onion, leave it out. It will be fine. If you did not see this little chopper, I found it on Amazon. It is a great little tool. I like to just not really chop up my onion, but make it smaller pieces. Have the blade in there, put it on. This is a handy little tool. And then you just pull this as much as you want to make your onion, in this case, as fine as you want. And we'll just add that right to it. And some green pepper. You can do the same thing if you want to make your green pepper a little bit finer. I actually like my green peppers to be a little bit bigger. Okay, much or as little as you like. If you have a red pepper or a yellow pepper, really makes those colors pop. And this is one of those dishes that if you want to make it ahead, it's really good made ahead and let it set. Let's do a little bit more pepper. Not too much, but enough. I will save that for another recipe because that will get eaten in my home real quick. Then we want to stir that together with a spoon that's bigger than that one. Okay, stir all that together. And then add in your dressing. All right. And let this sit in your refrigerator as long as you can to let those flavors develop and get to know each other and blend, and it will be delicious. So we're just going to pop this in the fridge, take a quick break. I am going to add my cabbage to my soup, simmer it all up. When I come back, I'll show you how to plate all this up and how to serve this. I'll be back in just a minute. All righty, welcome back. Everything is done. I just transferred the Texas caviar into a little serving dish. I would serve this with some kind of a dipping, like these corn tortilla chips that are the scoopy kind. They're not the flat, you could use the flat kind, but these kind of get that down in those little nooks and crannies. Crackers, whatever you want to serve them with, but that is great. Make this, I'll start over here. The Texas caviar is great made ahead and let those flavors have a chance to marinate together. Our cabbage soup is done. I added the cabbage and let it go maybe 5 minutes because I, again, like my cabbage to have some texture. If you want yours a little softer than that, just add it in the beginning and let it simmer. This is a great recipe made in your crock pot too. That way you've got it ready to go when you come home, or even in your Instant Pot. Just, you know, if yours has that saute feature, saute the beef, brown it, and then add your stuff and do 6 minutes on your Instant Pot and you've got a delicious soup. Here's our cornbread. I just took it out of the oven and out of the pan. It is still warm. I want to show you, for all of you that may not know, take a toothpick, insert it in a few places in your cornbread or whatever you're baking, cake. If the toothpick comes out clean, meaning it doesn't have any batter attached to it, your bread is done. And then I would just cut this into squares. Really, let's let that cool just a minute more before we cut it, but you know what to do with it. Cut it however you want. You could cut it into 4 squares. You could cut it into 9 squares, as big or as little as you want. But there you go. Here's our delicious Texas beef cabbage soup, our Texas caviar, and our jalapeno cornbread that is delicious any time of year. Thank you for joining with me, and I'll see you next time on Everyday Manna.